I wanted to bring up is I don't know if I think there's like societal messages. A lot of parents I've heard stories from, meaning like kids will say what their parents told them. So there's sort of this negative connotation, I think, with being sensitive or being, emotional, whatever, whatever. And, you know, for me, I don't really get super strong reactions to outside stimuli. Just my brain, I don't consider myself to be sensitive. I mean, of course, if someone's disrespectful or whatever, I can get my feelings hurt, or if a friend does whatever, whatever. But I know a lot of other people to where it's very, very heightened. They go through the day, and it's like they can experience such strong emotions and feelings because their brains are just so sensitive to that outside stimuli. You know, it's just wiring. And like I said, going back to society, and see, I don't know if people, say, oh, you're too sensitive, or oh, they like there's a thing where they're trying to like make them change or stop it. Is it because like they're thinking, well, the world is kind of a tough place, and if you're like that, you're going to be susceptible to breakdowns, or it's going to be bad for you in some way. That's being very generous. It could also be like the people who are saying you're too sensitive, they didn't learn to express and feel their emotions in a healthy way. Therefore, they don't, they're like, well, I don't know what I'm doing, so you're not going to do it either. Or whatever, whatever. There's a lot of different perspectives, but the thing is, the problem is culturally, sensitivity is sort of looked down on. And this generation, I think it's getting better, introduction of therapy and stuff, but it's still a thing. And then sensitive people will end up disliking themselves when sensitivity can be a really big gift. Maybe you have higher empathy levels. Maybe you'll be better at de-escalating situations because you feel those strong emotions. And my point that I was going to get to is, so someone says, oh, you're too sensitive, oh, it's weak. Actually, a sensitive person, they have to go throughout their whole day experiencing all different types of stimuli and experiencing emotions and having to work harder than other people to regulate that and to deal with that. That sounds like a very strong person. And someone who isn't sensitive, they're not going to know what that's like. And so to say, you're too sensitive and just bash it, it's like, why aren't we looking at the positives of it? And emotional regulation is important. And I mean, it's really up to the person. And they have to really be honest with themselves about if they're being healthy or whatever, whatever. Because, none of us know for sure how the brain works, personality. Maybe if you do certain things, you can actually become less sensitive, but it's like, are you doing it with self-love? Some people have the theory and idea that no, that's just how I am. That's just the way my brain is. And so they take care of themselves by, and so how they can is looking deep within themselves and saying, you know what, I love every part of me. You have to love every part of yourself. Sometimes you may not like certain parts of yourself, but they're all lovable in one way or another. And that's just what you have to do. You can't walk around with just like, there's just this piece. Just cut off. It doesn't work like that. Embrace it. So those are just some points that I feel are really important because society will it can overwhelm people. And I mean, especially like parents, that's the parts where it's really sad because, I mean, they say that your mom or your dad is a baby's first love. You're so easily influenced by your parents. And to have them judge you and put you down for just being who you are instead of trying to get to know you and maybe even admiring those qualities in you, seeing the strength and the gift of having that, and that's what I want all of you guys, people who are sensitive or people who aren't sensitive, all the gifts that you have, you have to, I'm going to say it again, it's important, you have to, I repeat things. I love it about myself though. We have to love every part of ourselves. Even, and I feel like with a lot of people, there's things within them that they don't feel could ever be lovable. Because I think society, or, as maybe in school it happens, or parents, whatever, we have these things where it's like we label them good or bad traits. Like for instance, let's say caring what people think. So society, like the messages that I kind of see with that is they associate it with very little confidence, insecurity, all this, sort of negative stuff. And people feel very ashamed if they care what people think. Like a lot of people I've interacted with, they, they tell me, I kept this in for a really long time because I was just so ashamed of it. I feel like it's bad. And it's like, that's horrible because, okay, the thing of it is, and I'm not trying to invalidate people. Like some people very well may be insecure and have trouble with confidence. And that's, attached to caring what people think. But the other perspective is, okay, well, what about people who have compulsive thinking? Their brain is going through, like I did the video on OCD. Their brain is constantly picking up on all these little details. They're more sensitive to that. And it's comparing, contrasting, and replaying stuff. And it's really hard to get that stuff to stop replaying because we're dealing with low serotonin. There's, misfires, and there's trouble with communication between the front parts of the brain and then the middle parts of the brain. And, that's just the biopsych perspective of it. And so it's not necessarily that you're super insecure, you don't love yourself. It can just be really hard for you to get off of the thought of what someone thinks. Like if you have an embarrassing moment, or if you really wanted to impress someone, it didn't go well, you could just replay that memory and be like, oh, and they probably thought this, and it's just really hard because it's compulsive. And so the other thing too is maybe the person is more feeling oriented. These are just possible ideas. These aren't coming from like reading research. These are just theories that I'm thinking because they make sense to me. If you're more feeling oriented, maybe your focus is going to be more on opinions, how people feel about you, versus focusing a lot more on facts and logic, et cetera, et cetera. But even someone to where they're maybe not feeling oriented, if we go to a job interview, we care what our employer thinks. If we don't, we're not going to, do so well. Because it's like, there's having confidence, and then there's a point to where it's like, oh, I don't care what anyone thinks, to where you're crossing boundaries and getting yourself in trouble and closing yourself off to opportunities. Because, when we care what somebody thinks, when we value their opinion, we tend to act a little bit differently. And that can turn into a problem. Like if you care so much what people are thinking, it's like, friends or acquaintances, it could be anyone, and you're changing your behavior and you're trying to be someone different in order to change their opinion of you. That's kind of where it's, we're running into trouble, and we're running into maybe self-confidence, people-pleasing, or it could even truly be a compulsion, because like I said, some people will replay stuff, they have anxiety about it, then they go and trying to switch or trying to please the person or change their opinion. That's the compulsion that they do. If you're experiencing a little bit of confusion about what I'm talking about with compulsions, obsessions, I put a video up about OCD, and that'll kind of explain this to make it hopefully a little more clear. But, so with this whole caring what people think, there could just be some wiring or some whatever to where that person's brain is just more likely to pick up on that stuff. And that's okay. And also the other thing is talking about confidence. Okay, let's say that you do have insecurities and self-esteem issues, and it's connected to caring what people think, etc. If you are trying to work on that within yourself, like let's say you confide in someone, I've had, people tell me like, hey, I really want to stop doing this because it's just impacting my life, etc., etc. I actually view that's a form of confidence, meaning the confidence part that I'm talking about is you're noticing that within yourself. You're caring enough about yourself to look at that and say, I want to make changes. And then you're sharing it with someone else, which takes courage. And the other thing is, some people are more private, so I'm not bashing people to where, hey, I don't want to tell someone that, it's no one's business. That's confidence right there because you're honoring your boundaries. So, and another thing too with like caring what people think, isn't empathy caring what someone thinks? I think like, I don't think there's any human who, and obviously there's anomalies, I always hate, generalizations aren't cool, but I think most people care or have cared what another person thinks on a certain level. It's survival. And another thing too is like, let's say for somebody, like let's say their husband or their child or their best friend, I think it's healthy to maybe care what they think, because you want to be respectful of them. You also, with these types of relationships, you probably value their opinion, and hopefully, if you're in a healthy relationship, that other person wants what's best for you, so you can get input from them, because we are not gods. We are wrong sometimes. So sometimes we need outside input. So that's healthy too. This is just such a multifaceted subject. So trying to reduce it down to, oh, you're just insecure, that's not good. Don't care what people think. It's like, that's not solving anything. So yeah, it's really important, with all these types of issues to critically analyze and to really try to get to the bottom of it. However, if you kind of go down the rabbit hole with stuff, then you know that that's something you need to, regulate. And if you go down the rabbit hole, you probably already, try to dissect stuff. But yeah, so that is my presentation. And if you guys have anything you want to add or any questions or, even debates, I love debate. And another thing is, like I said, I really love debate. But I don't like it where it's like people are doing it to win or to be right or an ego match or whatever. If I'm debating, I'm coming to learn from you because I don't know everything. You don't know everything. So we can learn from each other and we can grow. And that's what I really love about debate. And the other thing too is I'm someone to where I believe we can't know anything for sure. And another thing with that too is if you think that we can't know anything for sure, you're also like leaving yourself open to the idea that it's possible we can know stuff for sure, but we don't know for sure that we can. So that's my side note. And so how that connects to debate is things are constantly updating. I'm going to do a video about talking about laws of physics, also updating, that kind of stuff, and like I said, in a later video. But, things are always evolving. We're always learning new things, and there can be multiple perspectives, and all of them can have the same level of validity. Just because, and like let's say in psychology, you can have two totally just different studies that say total opposite conclusions, but they both have validity, so that's interesting. It's like, oh, there's maybe multiple things going on here. We gotta like do the puzzle. So in terms of debate, to actually think that you've ever won a debate, I feel like, if someone else gets the last word, okay, cool, yeah, whatever. I feel like a lot of the time, if the other person can't counterpoint, I feel like this happens a lot. I don't want to say most, but it's an articulation issue. Either the person freezes in that moment, they have a brain fart, they don't know how to get out, the point in the way that it needs to be conveyed to make sense to others. And then it's like a few hours later, you're in the shower, and you're like, I could have just said this. I wonder if I can text them to try and that type of stuff. People do that. The other thing is too, it could just be that person hasn't researched the topic enough. So it doesn't mean that other person has won and that point is the end all be all. It just means, you know, the other person just needs to brush up. And like I said, the main thing is stuff is always evolving, and maybe we're never right because stuff is always evolving. Meaning, when I say we're never right, just we can have one idea of something, and then new research or new experiment comes out and it invalidates that, or we add it to that. Knowledge is always evolving. So that's just kind of my spiel and my thing about, you know, my critique of debates and how a lot of people do debates. So anyway, I am off my soapbox for the day. Thank you so much for listening to my video. Like I said, questions, comments, debate, etc., etc. If you enjoyed this video, please like or subscribe, or both, if you want to see more of my content. And yeah, have a good day.